Hi everybody, how you doing? Welcome to Adobe Live. I've just got the music coming through like 50 different sources at the moment. What's up? My name is Flynn and I'm here with the awesome James Tran, aka Jam Tuner. Hey James, how you doing?
Yeah, it's lunchtime, so I'm quite hungry right now. I'm just thinking of fried chicken for lunch.
We were chatting about KFC just before we went live. You're making me hungry too, man. We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming from today and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So you haven't had lunch before the stream, so you post-stream lunch.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'll be doing the same thing. What's up, chat? If you're over on YouTube, jump on over to behance.net/live so we can see you, because that's a chat that we're using today. Can already see some folks in there. It's great to have you in here. Steve is in the house. What's up, Steve? Johanna is here. Rin is here as well. Hey. Lovely to see you in chat. Jump on over, say hi. You can ask us questions as we're going along. We'll be talking about cinemagraphs, photography, motion design, all sorts of fun stuff today with James Tran, aka Jam Tuner. I'm just going to ask you the question out of the gate because I already know the answer and I think it's cool. Where does Jam Tuner come from?
So have you ever had like a sandwich with jam and tuna in it?
Never, not once in my life.
It's the best thing. It's like heaven on earth. Like you know sandwiches people usually like to mix like a sweet sauce to complement the savory flavor of like a meat. Jam and tuna is the best sandwich you can make, and when you toast the badass, it's heaven on earth.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, that's wild. I don't eat tuna, so like it's so far away from something I'll have, but I do love a good sandwich press. So is that where the name came from? Is this like something from like when you were younger? Is this like a high school thing that just kind of stuck? Because I know that happens to a lot of people. They'll create like an online kind of moniker and it just travels with them throughout their life.
Oh no, it's sort of like, it plays with my name. My name is James Tran, and so people called me Jam. And I'm a foodie myself. I always loved food, and I stuck, like Jam and tuna always stuck with me because it is food.
Yeah.
And I just embraced it.
That's cool. Well, that's great. So usually at the beginning, you've actually been on Adobe Live, but it was a long time ago. It feels like 50 years now because it was actually physically at Adobe in our studio. Very, very long time ago now. But for those that aren't familiar with your work, can you give us like a bit of a idea of who you are and what you do?
So people online, they know me as a photographer or cinematograph artist. As for work, I'm a motion designer / animator, and I usually work for I freelance, and mainly my work has been in TV and television series. But yeah, people would know me more for my cinemagraphs, which is why we're here mainly. Yeah,
that's it. So you fully freelance now?
Yeah.
Freelancing. Yeah. Oh, very cool. Well, very cool. So we'll jump in after this question, but what got you into doing cinemagraphs in the first place? You got experience in motion design, like broadcast TV, animation, it's a big world. So what drew you, I guess from a freelance perspective, to cinemagraphs?
Yeah. So when I was working on TV, when you see triptychs on news, I used to work in news, Channel 9 News, and every single screen, they needed a looping screen for the presenter, just so there's something in the background, this movement. So that's how I learned how to loop things in Channel 9. And at 9, they always had news coverage of influencers doing bad stuff or dying, but I was curious about that influencer life of just constantly traveling. Yeah. So then I personally went on a travel trying to experience that life, but it wasn't really for me. I didn't like posting up on social media. And then I think a couple of years later, I decided to take it really seriously, to see how far I could take it if I decided to really commit to social media. And I found it a mad struggle, just trying to build an audience or build attention. So I started entering a lot of Instagram competitions. There's a lot of editing competitions. But I've noticed that there was a lack of cinemagraphs, and that was a sort of a thing that I could make, because I had the skill from Channel 9 and I was always a keen photographer. So I married those two and made a cinematograph, and I came first place for one of the competitions, and from then I just stuck with the niche of making cinemagraphs.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's great. Well, I love your work. I'm so glad we have you on. I'm interested in chat. Have you ever tried to make a cinematograph before? And how did you do it? Because I think we're going to be using After Effects today. So maybe we should check it out. Are you ready to jump in? I'm asking you, James, not chat anymore.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So we're checking out your screen now, and we are in After Effects. But yeah, take us through it. Like, where do you start? What are we gonna get up to today?
So I'm gonna try to approach After Effects from like a photographer's point of view. So touching After Effects is really, really scary for like most people, especially if you're a photographer. Even people who dabble in Premiere Pro, they find that After Effects is very, very scary and different. So I'm just gonna try to approach it as if from a Photoshop perspective. So cool. Yeah, we're gonna start by creating a new composition or a new project. So a composition is sort of just like the canvas you have in Photoshop, where you have your dimensions, what the ratios you want and whatnot. I like to start with 1920 by whatever ratio is 4:5 to 1920, so it's 1536, just so I can scale my image to fit like Instagram stories if you need to rescale it so that you don't lose any pixels. So I still keep it 4:5. Just gonna name this name. So today we're gonna create, hold on, I'll find it.
Yeah, so a couple of people have tried out cinemagraphs in the past. Yeah, Festus has, was it, I used Photoshop? Yeah, I did it back in the day. Like I did quite a bit in Photoshop, trying to loop it. I think my loops always looked like really janky. Like I didn't have that perfect loop down. And I think my frames were probably pretty rubbish. That was my experience. Rin, if my very glitchy phone cinematographics count, then yes, I am intrigued with the true art of it. Yeah, well, you're in the right place. Let's check it out.
So we're gonna try and create, gosh, not bad. We're gonna try and create this one today. So it's just a simple water loop, plus we add a blink. I like adding blinks because blinks, the eyes are like the window to the soul, and I like to capture like the soul in my portraits, and that's sort of what makes a good portrait is you're able to sort of communicate that or capture the essence of someone rather than just shoot a pretty portrait. So we're gonna try and go in and create this. So with cinemagraphs, there's so many ways to do it. For me, from my practice, I find that shooting a video or working with a video as a base is much better than starting from a photo, because the movements look more natural and look more realistic, and then you sort of get that sort of the realism in a footage rather than recreating it in photo. It just looks better. So yeah, we're gonna work with this. So first you want to import your footage. You can drag your footage from the project window. So this is the project window, and you just drag it into the timeline. If you've worked in Premiere Pro, you're probably familiar with timelines already. If you worked in Photoshop, there are timelines, but Photoshop isn't like optimized for video. That's why you always get like janky shots, because it's always really, really laggy. Just trying to navigate video in Photoshop. So this is the footage I'll be using.
So was this shot intentionally shot to create a cinematograph?
This
like
one,
when the day you shot it, you're like, I'm going to create a cinematograph out of this?
So usually I have the cinematograph in the back of my mind. When I go on photo shoots, I start the day with just like doing a normal photo shoots where you just take photos. And once you find a composition that you really, really like, that you can see that you can turn it into a cinematograph, that's when I take out a tripod and I set it down. And we're sort of like recreating the best I can describe is like a mannequin challenge. You want the model to stay as still as possible for like about a minute and pretend that she's just like a mannequin. And that's how you sort of get that illusion that it's not just a full photo. No, it's not a full video. It's like a bit of, it gives the illusion of a photo with bits of moving, with like a moving element.
I love that mannequin challenge.
Yeah.
And because it's interesting to me that you shot this 16 by 9, the composition to 4 by 5. So do you ever shoot portrait style because it's closer to 4 by 5, or do you always shoot kind of landscape?
Yeah, I usually shoot portrait because it's just more optimized for social. But shooting portraits as a video, it's always very awkward because you're not used to how like narrow the width is.
Right.
So I try always, if I do shoot landscape, I try to always shoot in 4K. So you do have that bandwidth of creating, or more pixels to shrink it in and create like a 4 by 5 vertical shot out of a landscape shot.
Cool. And I guess you got a little bit more like wiggle room as well with trying to get the composition right again. If you have all that extra kind of shot, I guess.
Yeah. We'll just drag this footage in. We scaled it to sort of fit the composition. So what I'm looking for is elements in the image that I can sort of loop. So here we have like, we've got water and we've got her blinking eyes. So what I usually start off with is I'm just going through which part of the image where she blinks, but she doesn't move her eyes too much. So you can sort of loop it seamlessly. Whereas if she's moving a lot and you're trying to loop it, it's going to become janky. So I'm just going to I'm going to make markers of where she blinks, just for reference. So there's one here. So I use a lot of markers in my timelines. It just makes it really faster to sort of jump between points. So to make markers, press like a shift and a number. That'll make a marker in accordance to whatever number you press. So here is one marker. She sort of does a half blink here. There's another one. So if it is kind of laggy when you're using After Effects, you can sort of reduce the resolution of the composition just so it flows faster. Because when you're working with 4K, it does, even for me, and I have a beastly computer, it does kind of sometimes get janky. So just lower the resolution.
That's a good tip. And like even especially if you're using like try and do something on a laptop or something like that, like reducing that resolution is going to speed up your process and make it a bit smoother during your edit, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm just looking for the parts where she blinks. When you're shooting cinemagraphs, using elements in nature is sort of like the easiest way to get into it. So like wind, water, and fire, they're usually easy to loop because they're just naturally, they fluctuate naturally. To the eyes, they look like they're naturally looping.
Right.
So a lot of my work uses elements in like nature, so wind, water, and fire mainly. I'd love to use lightning, but we don't get that much lightning here in Sydney.
Sounds dangerous going out to like shoot lightning with like your metal equipment and all that sort of stuff. So our friend Benjamin Lee is in chat. Ichiban, hey, what's up, Benjamin Lee? Said we made James eat jam tuna once. Solid 3 out of 10 for me. Yeah, I think it'd be a 1 out of 10 for me, but to each their own. And Demis Rusley, also friend, is in the chat. What's up?
So right now I'm just looking at the eyes. The small there goes my camera. The small details I look for, it's just sort of the movement in the eyes. And you can see when she blinks that there is movement in the eyes. And I feel like just small details like that, they really add to the human essence of the image, right? They give it more life. And these things are like, you don't pick them up if you did it in post. So to be able to shoot it really, really adds like another layer of humanity to it.
Yeah.
So I quite like this part of the footage where there's little movement in the blink. So we're gonna stick with this. So I like to duplicate the layer. You can press Control D, or to those who are new, you just, I'm not too sure how to do it manually. I'm just gonna press Control D here. What we want to do is sort of freeze parts of the footage to bring out that photograph element. So here I'm going to just freeze mainly her body and just this upper half. There's no movement in here. To do this, you go to time and time freeze frame. This will make a still out of your footage. So you just look at that. It kind of has the illusion of a photo already. You wouldn't know that it is footage.
That's cool. So does it make like a JPEG and just place it where your where the slider is on the timeline?
It just freezes the frame wherever your slider is on the timeline. Right. So I'm just gonna do it right before she blinks. So right here. Freeze frame. So now we want to sort of make the loop in the eyes and make her blink come to life. So to do this, I'm just going to duplicate the bottom layer again. I should name these. It's better practice. So I'm just going to duplicate the background and call this eyes. So with cinemagraphs or any sort of VFX, masking is sort of like the cornerstone of all VFX works. It's sort of the where the sleight of hand comes from in creating the illusions that's so good in VFX and so great in cinemagraphs. So to create masks, you need to be very, very familiar with the pen tool. Like it's pretty much going to be your best friend in doing any sort of like cinemagraphs or VFX works. So here we're gonna just mask out the eyes and sort of like just isolate out the eyes so we can sort of loop it and make it blink and give life to it.
Cool.
So G is a shortcut, or you can press up here for the pen tool. I'm just going to draw a mask around the eyes. I'm going to adjust my timeline just so it plays back to in the points where I want to play it in. So pressing B will create the in point, and N will create the end point. Sort of, so when you do play back, it sort of just plays back between the in and out point rather than the whole timeline.
Right.
So I'm just going to see where it starts. So let's start from here. And play back and see if it sort of works and see if it's kind of janky.
Looks awesome. And by the way, I've replaced your camera with a still of your headshot now, so we've got something there.
My bad. I realized that I was testing the camera to see if it works, but then it drained all the battery and I didn't have a backup.
It's all good. It's a live stream. At least one or two things have to go wrong. The camera's fine. We can see your screen, so that's all good. Benjamin Lee in chat is asking, do you have any tips for using the pen tool? I still don't fully get it.
Like, what don't you understand? Like, I feel like it's quite a basic tool. Like, what part of it is difficult? So to most people, this looks okay, but for me, I can see that there's a bit of jankiness. It's how pedantic you want to be in sort of fixing it. I feel like if we do have time, I'll show you how I go by fixing it, but I'll just continue on finishing like the looping.
Sorry, just if you could zoom back in and just tell us what exactly, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Because for me, I'd be like, cool, that looks perfect. Move on.
This is the loop.
But what are you
eyes
seeing?
right here.
Okay.
When it resets, her eyes, sort of, you can see them like slightly shift.
Oh, okay.
Slightly shift.
Oh yeah, okay, I see it now. Cool.
And if you're really, really, really pedantic, you can sort of see the outline of it as well. Like there is a small outline. We can hide that by adding a feather to it. So clicking on the eyes layer, you press F. F would open this mask feather option, and you can just sort of blend it in. I'm just going to put 25, and it sort of blends in. It's very subtle. Like these details are very subtle. Like you can barely see it, but if you work in Cinemagrass for so long, I can pick it up, but like most people will be fine with it.
Yeah, you've got like an eye for it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Nice. TK in the chat. What's up, Tim Northey?
Yo,
Good
TK.
to see you.
So I think that's good. So now I'm just going to trim the eye layer so I can repeat the blinks throughout the composition. So to do this, I'm just going to cut out from where it starts, which is right here. So to trim your layer, I press Alt and close bracket. I completely, like I've worked with so many shortcuts, I completely forgot how to do it manually.
Yeah.
But you want to trim.
It's always the way.
Yeah.
It's like muscle memory for you now, right?
Yep. So I'll close that. So now we know that this is just the poor eyes, and we want to loop the eyes multiple times. We can just duplicate it and put it somewhere else in the timeline, and you'll have like a blinking eye. So that's our blink. I'm just going to change these colors. So I'm very OCD when it comes to like layers and sort of keeping them neat. So you can change the color of your layers just here by pressing this colored box. Or the shortcut will be Control and a number pad key, and that will easily just change colors. So you know which ones, like which ones are what.
Oh, that's cool. Control and num key. I didn't realize that scrolled through the colors. That's like a quick and easy way to do it.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we got that. So next we want to sort of isolate just the stillness in her body and the trees here. So then we have like movement in the water. So to do this, we go back to our still layer. I'm just going to, again, G for mask. We're just going to draw a mask just around her body here.
See, Ben Lee, make sure you pay attention during this pen tool portion of the tutorial.
So we're going to test to see how this looks.
Yeah, cool. Like that was a very rough, like quick kind of pen tool thing there. You don't have to be too precious about it because you're not like right on the edge of the water. Is that why?
So pen tools, it's a matter of blending, and like you can't really try to be perfect with every single detail when you're trying to blend things. And I'm not a person who's too stuck into the details. I like to get the vibe first and then work on details afterwards. But if the vibe is there, to me the vibe is the foundation of every image I do, because if there's no vibe, it's just like another image you would see, and it won't connect to you emotionally. So I'm always trying to roughly test if there's a vibe first before I get into details. So yeah, this is rough, but like water has rough edges. You can't really sort of like trying to grasp water that's flowing. Like can't really grab water, right? It just flow through your fingers. So I'm just as rough. That's probably a bad way of saying it, but
No, I get it. That's cool. It makes sense.
Playing this back. So we're lucky here because this water it's just rippling really subtly. So it looks like it's already looping, even though it's not. It has the illusion of a looping. And usually for most people, this is like satisfactory for them, right? Like I find that we got to this result really quickly.
Yeah.
But if you are using waves, there is a way. So I learned this at Channel 9 of like faking loops. So to do this, sort of duplicate our background. We're just going to call it water. I'm going to make it blue because water's blue. I'm going to add my markers here. What we want to do is sort of blend the in point into the out point, so it starts and begins at the same point. It's sort of hard if that makes sense. So if the in point is here, we want to separate the layer. So to separate the layer, I'll use Control-Shift-D. That sort of cuts the layer in half. And I'm going to bring this back up top. And I'm going to drag the footage over. Or again, you can use bracket keys, and that'll instantly snap it to where your timeline is.
Oh, cool.
What we want to do is, so we want to blend it. So we want to animate the opacity to sort of fade onto itself. So to do this, you click on the top layer that we just put up, you press T for opacity, and we want to make it full opacity at where it ends. So then it starts where it ends, and that's sort of the illusion of the loop. So then you want to go to the beginning of it and make it 0. So it's just blending into itself.
Right, okay.
Even though the water's already looping, this is another way. If the water doesn't loop perfectly, this is how you make it loop perfectly.
That's a really cool tip.
And that's essentially like basically it. This was like a very, very, very simple one. So next is sort of creating the grade, right? Creating the color. In filmmaking terms, people usually start with fixing like color correction before they color grade. So color correction is sort of bringing back the footage of how you're meant to see it, which is, so how people usually shoot in film, they usually shoot in log. So log is sort of like a flattened version. How do I compare this to photography? So photographers usually shoot in RAW, and shooting in RAW is sort of like a flattened or a full image with all the data in it. So it keeps the highlights, it keeps the shadows, keeps the details and the highlights, shadows. It's the same thing with video, right? So when you shoot in log, it's sort of like shooting in RAW, but for video. And and you protect the highlights and shadows, but the image looks sort of flat. And what we're doing now is sort of we're bringing back the details. So
sorry, just a quick question on that. So do you always shoot in log?
Yeah, I always shoot in log because I would like to preserve the details and sort of have more creative input in post rather than being stuck with like sort of a JPEG, which has limited amount of like post you can do to it.
Cool.
So the way I approach this is like I like to work in layers. So a lot like Photoshop, I like to work in adjustment layers. So you have more control over the result in the end. So to create a new adjustment layer, just go new, an adjustment layer, or Control-Alt-Y is sort of the shortcut. So the first thing you do in terms of color correction is you want to bring back the black and white points to bring back the contrast in the image. So to do this, I use effects, but I use a plugin which lets you quickly access like effects. So I want to bring back levels. Usually the effects bar is here, but I cannot see it. Hold on, window.
I have to do this all the time in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Just be looking for some window, and I always have to like turn it on and turn it off just to find it.
So you can just search for levels here. And you can just drag it onto the adjustment layer or double click on it. So usually you want to bring the in and out point of levels to where the mountain starts, and that will bring back the contrast. So here you have like the in point. So these are the shadows, and you want to bring back the blacks in.
Right.
And on this side is sort of the highlights, and you want to bring back the highlights. Again, I find that this is too contrasty. It looks too JPEG-y. So I usually like to keep it a little bit flat, so it has the illusion of, say, like washed out film. And having movement in sort of a washed out film look is sort of, it gives it the wow factor. It's like, is this a photograph or is it like a cinematograph? It confuses the audience. So I just like to get halfway instead.
I'll just let chat know that I was like covering up. We're looking in the top left-hand corner to see the levels, but my camera was covering it for a second then. So sorry about that. I've moved my camera.
So usually when you shoot in log, it's always kind of desaturated as well. Like it's sort of washed out. So you also want to bring back into saturation. So I'm just going to create a new adjustment layer. We're going to look for hue and saturation. Again, you just double click it. I'm just going to bring back in some saturation. So now this looks sort of like more real to life on how we shot it.
Yeah. Hey, do you mind zooming in maybe just a little bit on the image just while we're making these changes so we can kind of check it out? Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Just bring this down. So now we've corrected our footage. I'm just going to call this levels. Saturation. We want to grade the image or sort of put our own coloring or our own signature to it. I'm just going to be lazy today, and I'm just going to use the built-in presets that's in Lumetri Color. So what I like about Adobe is how they've synced up like color grading to be the same across all the applications. So Lumetri is sort of the video version of Lightroom and Photoshop and what we're familiar with, like a Camera Raw. So the settings are the same. So you can also grade in like Lumetri, which if you're not familiar with Lightroom, you have your basic correction, you got your temperature, you got your tint. You can also color correct in this as well, but I like to keep it in layers just so there's more control. So one way we can go through this is, so there's a bunch of film stocks, so a bunch of presets that's already in Lumetri, and I like to usually browse through these. I never go through these because they're usually like really default, but the film ones that Adobe has, that they're really pretty good. But here already, I'm already feeling that there is like a washed out look or washed out film look.
That's cool. So like for us at home, that's just kind of built in. You can just kind of play around with it, and it's like an adjustment layer, like you were talking about before, a little bit like Photoshop. You can just play around with it. It'll affect kind of everything on that layer, and you can kind of turn it on and turn it off so it's not destructive either, right?
Yeah, non-destructive workflow.
It's the way to be.
So yeah, and if you find that it's too washed out, you can go back into your layers, so your levels, and sort of just play with the black levels or the highlights, and sort of just bring it in a way that you're satisfied with. Just going to keep it there for this tutorial. I'll just keep it short, and that's essentially it.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So usually I like to add like a music track to it, and I like to sync the blinks to like a beat, and that adds another layer of mood or another layer of just like a more interesting piece of work.
That's cool. Like back to the filters, do you have like favorites that you kind of go to, and do you consider like your feed, I guess? Like I know that some photographers will have like tend to use cool light or warm light or like really high contrast or something in their feed because that's what people kind of expect it from their work. What's your approach on that with filters?
So I used to be pedantic about my feed, but I feel like that trying to limit yourself all the time to like a certain set of colors, it limits your creativity, and you start to overthink it. Like, do I just want to make, or do I want to make like a sort of portfolio? It's up to you. For me, I enjoy the creative process, and to limit myself in like creating, I feel like it takes the joy, the flow out of creativity for me. So I don't care about it as much as I used to, and now I'm just like more experimental with coloring.
That's cool.
But yeah, this is it. So after this, you'd want to export it. So you can file, export, and add to media encoder queue.
I was going to ask, are you media encoder kind of person, or do you do everything straight from After Effects? but looks like Media Encoder.
I definitely prefer After Effects, but there was a switch like a couple of years ago where all the H.264 settings weren't in After Effects anymore. You had to go to Media Encoder to get to it.
Right.
So that's how I just transitioned to.
You've been forced out. Sorry about that. Wasn't me. TK North in the chat has asked, where do you find your music? Yeah, you were chatting about music before, and adding it to your work. So yeah, where do you find your music?
Should I bring up the website or?
Yeah, you can. Go for it. We love resources here on Adobe Live. It's always great to find out where you get your stuff.
So I use looperman.com, which is like it's beats and samples for DJs, but for me it has that low fidelity feel to it, and I usually just use like a sample in it. So I use Looperman here. It's not the prettiest website, but this is how I find loops for my audio, right? And you probably can't hear it, but like these all generally loop, and they're about like 10 to 20 seconds. So that's the perfect length I find for Cinemagraph, is around 10 seconds, because the file itself isn't too big. So that when you play it back in Instagram, it doesn't sort of go all fuzzy. Because if the file was too big and you're trying to upload to Instagram tries to compress the image, and that usually breaks the image because the file is too big.
Yeah, and like music, like particularly music, like if it's in like stereo and all that sort of stuff, can be massive. I'm always like quite surprised at how large audio files can be. So that's like a really important call out, that I guess Instagram will probably try to crunch everything in the file down, right? Including the music, so it could go a bit funny. So would you like edit it down yourself or anything like that? Or do you try to choose music that is like smaller in file size, or just keep it short to 10 seconds and you're always safe?
So in Looperman, the files here are usually generally short anyway. You get like 16 seconds, you got 15 seconds. And then usually they never reach megabytes. They're usually kilobytes, because they are just samples. They're not like whole tracks, and they're low fidelity, which is sort of the vibe I go for. Is lo-fi vibes. So when rendering, you want to go for H.264, and I usually go with the default match source high bit rate. That usually optimizes the quality of the post whilst still like quite a low file size. Whereas if you go for anything else, it might reduce the file size. So match source high bit rate is usually default. And and then you just press play or render.
That's really cool. Steve's asking, I find it hard to imagine why Media Encoder would be different / better than the same gear in After Effects. Why would Adobe do that? I don't know. I do love using Media Encoder though, when I have to like export tons of assets, like one after another, and I can kind of send stuff to Media Encoder and then go back into After Effects, make whatever small change I need to make, and then kind of send that across. Definitely speeds up my process when I figured out how to do that.
I think they do that because you can work at the same time.
Yeah.
So continue working your project whilst encoding. But then when you're working whilst it's coding, it's laggy because it's processing your files. So it just sort of, I don't know, it's a weird balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is pretty much it.
It's great. So cool. So I got a question, like when you're out on a shoot, because you say, there's a lot of photography involved as well, and then the Cinemagraph portion, like what's your ratio of like taking photos to recording video with the intention of creating a Cinemagraph? Like, do you just take a couple of videos and you're like, yeah, I got it? Or is it a bit like some photographers where you take like 1,000 photos and then get home and kind of go through everything meticulously to see which one worked?
So I'm more like a photographer, so I'll take 1,000 and see which one that works.
Right.
But my ratio is usually like 95%. I'll shoot photos, and 5% is sort of when I take a shot that I really, really like, and I feel like that can be transformed to a Cinemagraph. It's sort of when I take the tripod out, I set it up, and I do the whole mannequin challenge and try to get them just to stay with that pose and loop like whatever I can do, whether it's water, whether it's hair or clothing. It's like the small subtlety nature stuff usually works the best.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It.
That's awesome. I've got a couple of questions for you. So maybe do you want to just bring up your Instagram? We can have a look at one or two other pieces of work while I ask you some of these questions, if that's all right. Because for people that want to get into like photography, motion, or animation, did you study it specifically, or how did you get into like doing what you do?
So I started like digital media in uni, but that's a very broad umbrella for like just any digital forms of artwork. It's sort of like fine arts but in digital media or digital forms of work. And there was an After Effects class, an animation class, and I excelled in the class, and the teacher recognized that I had talent in animation, and she sort of took me on as a mentor, and that's how I sort of stuck with animation.
Wow, that's cool.
Someone saw potential in me, and I was really lucky in that sense that I found like a mentor naturally in animation.
That's cool. There's not very many people out there. I don't know about you, chat, but there's not very many people out there that I think like can look back on their career and like say, yes, I had a mentor. It seems like a really difficult thing to get. So that sounds pretty cool. What do you think, like how much, like what value do you think was given to you from the mentor?
It wasn't so much technical value, but it was so much more like a purpose or how your career can look as a creative. And she sort of broke down like what her path was like, and what she sees the value in animation. Because with animation, it's easy to jump into sort of like gambling and gaming animation, which creates a lot of money. But for her, that was like breaking the soul of a creative. And she respected the soul of creativity a lot, and she sort of nurtured that in me to sort of always chase like creative pursuits rather than chase money when it comes to like animation and creativity. I feel like that helped a lot, and she sort of helped. So I had like a short film I made in uni. It sort of helped push that out to film festivals and whatnot.
Oh wow!
Awards. Yeah.
Oh, just got a couple of awards in film festivals, like super casual. That's wild.
Just so long ago.
Man, that's still super cool. Doesn't matter how long ago it was. Like being young and successful is amazing. The other thing I wanted to ask you, and let us know, chat, if you have any other questions. Was I guess around travel. You mentioned travel earlier on, and maybe some of the people missed that part. Like out of all the places you've traveled for photography and stuff, like do you have a favorite place, or do you have somewhere on your list, like once we can get back to international travel, that you're really looking forward to visiting?
So my favorite places are the less traveled places, like the road less traveled spots. So for me, it was Myanmar and Bolivia. So with Myanmar, the gates to tourism just recently opened. So when you're traveling through Myanmar, it isn't very tourist friendly, but that to me, that is adventure. Like it feels like you're really exploring a new place where not many people have traveled to. And that's sort of like the ecstasy of travel for me, is really, really exploring new places and like feeling like you stepped somewhere where no one else has been before.
That's cool. So you don't approach it like in where are the best spots in, this country that all the photographers go to take photos. You're much more interested in kind of discovering yourself and kind of stumbling across like interesting shots and compositions and things like that.
Yeah. And food.
Man. And food, yeah. Is there a KFC in Myanmar? Assume not.
No, there wasn't.
There wasn't. Devastated. So maybe we could just chat a little bit about what you'll be showing us on Thursday. So I think is that it, the neon one down there? Maybe we could have a sneak preview and check that out.
Yep, so we're going to do this neon one. So most beginner photographers who get into like photography, they always start off with neon portraits because it's easy. It's sort of like it's an interesting subject, and you don't have to go too far to sort of find neons. And usually they'll start off with like Vivid or an event like Vivid. They'll shoot at stuff like that. And probably one of my most common questions, like, how do I get animated neons? So tomorrow we'll be covering on how you can animate from a photo instead of footage, and how we can just sort of bring your neons to life and add life to it.
Oh man, that's cool. And that's on Thursday, everybody. So that's interesting. So it's the different approach than what you did today. So instead of, starting from actual film, video file, you're starting from like a static image. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So we can check it out. Different approaches to creating cinemagraphs. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks chat. Thanks for the questions. Great to see the photography crew like jumping in and supporting each other. I always love it. It's a really nice community that you guys have, and it's wonderful to see. But thank you everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks James. Thank you so much for showing us your techniques, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. See you everyone. Bye.